So I wanted to start by talking about, a big factor that's affecting the energy market at the moment, which is everything that's going on in the Middle East and the war in Iran. And we're seeing this kind of terminology around kind of energy security. And I think it's been played out a little bit as a kind of energy security, net zero kind of go together. But from what you're seeing, Tom, what's the impact of what's going on in Iran? In terms of like, we're seeing it day to day now, aren't we? We're seeing energy prices starting to go up. But what's the link there between that and energy security?
Well, I think the first thing is that hopefully Iran isn't another Ukraine, because everyone stopped talking about Ukraine now, and we're all talking about Iran, and hopefully it'll come back to Ukraine is still just as big an issue. But also what happened with Ukraine was we had this spike in energy prices where everyone got really upset because energy bills went up and it started hitting people at home. And then as they petered back, everyone forgot about it. So hopefully this is a turning point, that these shocks aren't just a short-term thing, that they happen at once and we need to deal with it, but also there's going to be more shocks. It's Iran now, but it could be somewhere else in the future. But what it means is, particularly for the UK, because we import so much foreign fossil fuels, whether it's gas or even electricity and oil, the impact on us is more dramatic than it is on other countries that have a lot more self-sufficiency. So when something like Iran happens and oil prices spike, that hits us really hard, not just in cars when we're filling up with petrol or diesel, but also gas prices, because all the energy markets are linked. So when one goes up, they all spike because people panic and energy starts to get restricted. So it has a direct impact on the UK because we import so much. So until we become more self-sufficient across the board, we're always going to be beholden to the slightest change. And it doesn't have to be as dramatic as a war. It could be someone like Donald Trump putting another tariff on, a country like Venezuela or Cuba that has a knock-on impact on another country, which then impacts us. So it all comes down to self-sufficiency. The more self-sufficient we are, the more we insulate ourselves from anyone making anything that has an impact on energy bills.
Yeah, I think we've seen it even with the energy price cap being in place. It's kind of, I suppose,
but it's just temporary. Yeah, the energy price, it's only ever for, like, we know that the next energy price cap keeps us safe, but they're already talking about the one after that is going to be where the huge spike is.
But it's only keeping us safe. It's only keeping households insulated from the rise, but it's still impacting. Somebody still has to pay for it.
Yeah.
So it's not like all of a sudden the energy price cap also means that the gas prices and oil prices don't go up. They fluctuate anyway.
Yeah, so all it means is you're protected from one hit. So we know the next energy price cap is fixed and we're protected because the big energy companies are all buying so far in advance that they can stomach it because they bought gas a year ago, whatever it might be. So let's say the next energy price cap is July and we go, right, we know that it's going to reduce or it's only going to go up by 5%. But we know the next one after that is going to be like 50%. So we know the next one keeps us safe, but 3 months after that, everyone's screwed.
But who's bearing that cost?
Well, it's ultimately the energy companies, because they're restricted on what they can charge. They can't go above the energy price cap. Okay. But the energy price cap is only fixed for the next one. Then they'll all reevaluate and go, right, we took a hit on that one. But the one after that, we're going Ofgem go, right, it's now 50% up because all the prices went up. So then all the energy companies go up to the price cap again. So you're only protected from one, and it's only 3 months at a time. So they're all in short bursts. But the reason the energy companies can do it is because they forward buy. So if they bought gas price a year ago, then just because gas is going up now, it's okay because they bought a year ago. So the real knock-on impact comes in another year's time if they're buying now.
And where does... So this kind of thought process of if we switch to electric, we'll all be fine, when there's still a huge amount of electricity that in the UK is produced from burning gas.
Or imported. We import as well.
Yeah. And is that the same? And I know you're coming over from New Zealand. Is it the same over there, or do you generate a lot more of your own electricity over there?
In New Zealand, we do generate a lot more of our electricity. From memory, oil and gas is an industry that New Zealanders actively tried to minimise. It got to a point where New Zealand wasn't actually generating enough electricity from its renewable energy sources that we started to actually purchase oil and gas back into the country.
Really?
Yeah. And in regards to what's happening in Iran, which is quite interesting, maybe a difference in how it's impacting New Zealand is it's now got to the point where the government is talking about potentially putting in almost scheduling when people can go and fill up their car and get gas into their vehicles. Yeah, because New Zealand obviously doesn't have that, doesn't produce any of it, and is quite far away from the rest of the world. So it's a real issue back home in New Zealand.
I wonder whether that could translate to, because at least in New Zealand, where you do have most of your heating and hot water is electrified.
Yes.
So you've got solar and you've got power on the grid. If over here, if they implemented something like you can only fill up your car so many times per week, that could equally translate to how long you can have your heating on per day.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know how they would. Well, I suppose with smart meters they could.
Yes.
Yeah. They could monitor if of at least how long you were having it on for.
But they've already started doing that in other countries. I don't know if it was France or somewhere else where they've started limiting what days you can fuel up your car. I mean, obviously all that happens is you concentrate all the demand into those few days. But I think it's more the mindset of getting people used to not just using on demand willy-nilly, not walking around the house in shorts and a t-shirt and having the heating cranked up, not driving everywhere because I can only fill up on a Monday or a Wednesday or whatever it might be. So I think it's more practically, it doesn't make that big a difference in terms of what you do with the energy when you need it, but it's the mindset of there are restrictions, so I'll be more conservative with how far I drive and how much gas and electricity I use. It doesn't stop people getting in the car and driving, but it makes them think twice about doing it because they know they can only fuel up on certain days.
I think that's why it's really important to connect the dots on this, because you could easily, and I'm sure people will start to say this the minute it comes in, start to talk about kind of Keir Starmer and how he's a communist and he's now telling us we can only drive 2 days a week and that might be, and not to try and scaremonger, but you say it's already starting in New Zealand and in other countries. If that does come in, that's directly linked to the fact that the resource that we use, be that gas and oil coming out of Iran being one of the biggest producers of it, is being restricted. Therefore, the restriction then comes in further down the line. Whereas if it was electrified, and even I think in the UK, we have the ability to generate more electricity than we currently actually do generate, because we don't have enough homes or enough energy storage in general, not necessarily just homes, but even industrial scale energy storage. We don't have enough electrified systems. We still have most of our homes on gas. So if the more we switch to electricity, whether that's heat pumps, solar, battery, EVs, the less reliant we are on imported energy sources.
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of bits on that. I'm not sure, and I know people do call him a communist, but I don't know whether communism comes into it, because it's more of a dictatorship if they start saying when you can and can't fill up. But people like to ban the word around without really understanding what communism is and the concept behind it. But the other problem with Iran is it's not just a big oil producer, but the Strait of Hormuz, where all the oil tankers go, is like 40% of the world's oil goes through it. So even though Iran do produce oil, they also control the shipping lane for everyone else's oil. And that's the big challenge, is that even without the problems in Iran, because it's all concentrated through this one shipping lane, the slightest change to that. So I think the ships going through it now are down to about 20% of the ships that were going through it, which you can look at online. So 80% of the ships that were going through now aren't, because they don't want to get bombed. That is causing the spike in prices, not just because supply is restricted, but just because they can't get through that shipping lane. But to come to your point about security and self-sufficiency, it's no different to being at war. In times of war, the first thing that countries need to do is be self-sufficient in food supply, which is why in like World War II, everybody started farming the land. We needed to produce our own vegetables, because if you produce your own vegetables, you're not reliant on tomatoes coming from Spain or wherever it might be, because it's restricted. It's no different with energy. If you're reliant on energy or any sort of supply coming from abroad, especially when you're an island nation, practically you would say, well, that is a risk. And that because if something changes or there's a spike in prices or a restriction in supply, you've got no way of controlling it. And the difference between energy and vegetables is it doesn't take that long to spring up your own garden where you can produce your own vegetables. Springing up a power plant or getting an energy supply takes longer. So we should have been thinking about this 20 years ago, which is where France were, where they're 80% nuclear. They were thinking about it a long time ago. So when there's a spike in energy supplies, France don't see it as much because they've got lots of nuclear power plants. We stopped building them because people didn't want nuclear power plants. We didn't fit lots of solar panels and heat pumps, and we took our time, whereas Norway, Finland, Sweden all got ahead of the game. So we've always remained reliant on imports, which means that when something like this happens, we all sit there going, energy prices are up again. There's a cost of living crisis. Well, yeah, we could have seen this coming 20 years ago, but we don't like to forward think. We like to be quite reactive.
Well, and maybe as a nation, we are quite slow to move forward with stuff. So if you sit there, for the people that sit there and say, I'll never have a heat pump, I'll never have solar, I'll never have battery, I'm quite happy with my boiler. If these restrictions then come in, you have to tie those two decisions together, yeah? You have to say...
Well, yeah, you would hope they would, but those are probably the same people that go, but you're going to give me a discount on my energy bills to make up for Iran, yeah?
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is there's no consequence. And some of the stuff that's now coming out where particularly this government finally seem to be a bit more ballsy, and they're a bit more standing firm on, no, even though it's not popular, there are certain things we need to do for the greater good in the longer term.
Which is what they did in Norway, wasn't it? When they made some really, really tough decisions and implemented some things that were not popular, but they were cross-party because they knew it was the right thing to do for the country, and the people weren't happy about it because in the short term, they had the pain of it. And now, when we're buying our gas from Norway, they're reaping the rewards of it and being able to invest in the industry and the eco infrastructures over there. So it's...
Well, I don't want to say I told you so, but we, along with others, have been saying it for a while, particularly on LinkedIn, is if we were at war, what happens is usually all the parties of government get together, and it happened in World War II. If you watch like The Darkest Hour and films like that, they form a war cabinet and they get different people from all the parties because they all go, politics aside, we've got a common enemy because we're at war. We're a nation at war, so we all have to get together. What we should be doing, and as I say, we've said this for quite a while, is treating net zero, i.e. decarbonisation, as a war. It's a war on climate change, and it's about energy security. And we should put politics aside and get people from all parties to come together and go, we have a common enemy, which is energy, which is finding a sustainable source of energy and being self-sufficient because the planet's burning and everyone's going to die at some point if we don't do something about it. And there's a short-term energy security issue for all countries. Everyone should be self-sufficient. They can generate their own energy and grow their own food because then they're always safe. They can always control their own supplies. And if everyone got together and said, right, politics aside, we'll all get together and say, regardless of who's in government and what the budget is, this is ring fenced. We will always have a dedicated department that is focused on this, that is, non-negotiable, which is kind of what happens with the NHS. Nobody touches the NHS budget. No one wants to because it's so politically charged that it's scary to even talk about it. But yet we allow energy security to just go by the wayside, and they go, right, there's an election coming, let's give everyone a discount, let's not put solar panels on because it's not a vote winner, whereas it should just be, no, we know it's not popular, but we're thinking about 2-3 generations ahead where there could be a war or there could just be a restriction in energy supply, and it should just be a national security issue.
And is that the thing that rolls over? If you only have 4 years in government and the next party is sat there going, we're just going to let you all have gas and keep it all free. And when it goes wrong, oh God, it's because of this thing in Iran.
Absolutely. Well, they talk about, I think, 5 years in government, your last 18 months are a write-off and your first 6 to 12 months are a write-off. So you only get like 2 years in the middle, because the first 6 months to a year, you're trying to work out what's going on and get your head above water. Or if you're this government, try and find the right people to do the job. And the last 18 months, you're giving stuff away. There's an election coming, so you're saying, right, what tax cuts are we going to do? What free stuff are we going to give away? What's going to get us the votes to get back in again? So you only got 2 years in the middle. So for a government to go, we're going to focus on something that is thinking 20 years ahead is quite a big ask, because they're trying to survive in the middle, particularly if you've got loads of stuff being thrown at you like wars and cost of living crisis. However, for once, this government seemed to have done that, despite every opportunity to cut a net zero and cut decarbonisation. Even when the budgets have been decimated and tax rises, they've held firm, which is quite refreshing, because every other one has gone, if ever we need something to kick down the road, net zero is one of the things, just like defence spending or roads or potholes or whatever it might be. Whereas this government seems to be going, no, some of our key priorities are NHS, welfare, whatever else, but net zero seems to be one, because they seem to have got their head around the fact that it's not just about saving the planet, which unfortunately for a lot of people, they see it as not their problem. They go, well, I won't be here when the planet's burning because it'd be 2 generations away. Whereas what the government is saying is, yeah, that is the icing on the cake that we're saving the planet. What we can focus on, though, is people's energy bills. And again, people then go, but my energy bills aren't a problem right now. This was before the war in Iran, so I don't need to think about it. Yeah, but we're thinking about when they are a problem, when they are going to be an issue. And if we can get ahead of that, then when there is a war, we can start to solve it.
Yeah, and I suppose the question is how big an issue is it going to be? Because I think every time energy prices go up, people just kind of they'll be annoyed about it, they'll grumble about it. People might use less energy, and maybe more people fall into that category of fuel poverty. But that's a big difference from being told you can only have your energy on for a certain amount of time per day. You know, that's a big leap.
And also you can only fit certain things. So I know there's been a change in new builds, but they have talked about, and it will come down the line, you can only have electric cars. There'll be a ban on petrol and diesel cars. You can't fit boilers anymore. So they are moving more towards the unpopular decisions, which the word communism will get thrown around, but it's not sort of the government know best, but at the same time, people smarter than us average people should tell us, unfortunately, you can't fit these anymore because we're thinking 20 years ahead, and our job is to think 20 years ahead. That's why you elected us, and petrol and diesel cars at some point are going to have to stop if we want to protect the here and now and the future.
And you've seen this in New Zealand, where these decisions have been made, where solar and battery is far more common than it is over here. The energy market in general is further ahead than we are over here.
Yeah, it is in ways. I think in New Zealand, innately, you go outside and it's really sunny most of the time. So you kind of,
That's what it looks like on Lord of the Rings.
No,
it's always snow.
No, that's true. But you kind of have a feeling like, okay, well, it's pretty sunny. There's a high chance that solar power is going to work. And Australia really took it on and really kind of proved that it would work. And so it was a natural transition for New Zealand to kind of pick it up and start to kind of deploy it on a mass scale. But in New Zealand, there are some key differences. Like the electricity industry is a lot different. You don't have as much competition. So you have about 4 or 5 monopoly energy companies that don't really give you the access to the time of use tariffs like you have here over the UK. So while it's very successful in regards to solar and battery, it still has quite a political and I guess what's the right words? It just hasn't really progressed that far in regards to the electricity industry as it has here in the UK. Businesses like Octopus, I think when I first moved, I was like, wow, these guys really actually do care about, from what it seems, giving people access to electricity at a rate that is kind of sustainable.
They've really driven it, haven't they?
Yeah.
The changes they've made. And in New Zealand, is it more common to have a fully electrified heating and hot water? And is it more common to have kind of blown air style systems like aircon? Yeah,
you're correct. So it's traditionally air to air heat pumps. Growing up, that was all I knew. I never saw a gas boiler or anything like that.
For those who are watching that don't know, what is an air-to-air heat pump?
So an air-to-air heat pump is a heat pump that sucks in air from the outside and then provides you with warm air inside your property, or also cools the air as well.
So rather than radiators, you have the kind of cassette-style things that you'd see.
So it's aircon, it's air conditioning.
Yeah, it's air conditioning. So yeah, that's what we had in New Zealand, and you traditionally just have electricity at your property.
But you do have you have much more sun over in New Zealand than we have over here. But you do still get the cold. So these systems, whereas aircon might typically be seen as a solution for cooling, these systems do heating and cooling.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, so it does heating and cooling, and in New Zealand, especially where I'm from, it's in the South Island. It gets really, really cold. I wouldn't say as kind of bone chilling as it does here in Liverpool, but it does get really cold. And they still, you don't know any different. It's not like I would prefer to have a wet system or an air-to-air heat pump. It just is what it is.
But ultimately, it's electrified. That's where, because a lot of people talk about New Zealand as being like the barometer of the future. Like you look at New Zealand and what they're doing, we should get in like 5 years. They tend to be ahead. And what they have done is been electrified very early, because air conditioning is ultimately electrified and your hot water is electrified. So where New Zealand are ahead is they've done a lot of electrification, regardless of whether it's coming from the sun or not. And they've sort of predicted the future, which is the only way to be self-sufficient or to move towards self-sufficiency is to be in control. And to be in control, the only thing we can control is electricity. We can't control gas, we can't control oil, we can't control coal because it's reliant on digging it up or it being there. Whereas electricity, we can always find ways of producing electricity.
Well, the absolute starting point for it is if you've got solar on your roof and you've got a battery, you are in control of what goes on in your own home at that point.
Yeah.
And then you're never gonna. You'd have to have a huge solar array to be able to cover you year round for heating and hot water and general appliance needs. And that's where then the electricity networks have to come in, and the more regional generation from wind and large scale solar and hydro, all of which as an island nation we can do probably better than most. And
we're the UK's number one for the world's number one for wind, and we're a very small island in the grand scheme of things.
And I think we are there from having the infrastructure, but we're not, because we're still heavily reliant on fossil fuels. We're not making the most of that generation.
Yeah, because we go down. Human nature is to go down the path of least resistance. So if we've got cheap gas or cheapish gas coming from abroad and cheap oil, then yeah, it's great to make some wind turbines. And if we're incentivized, we will do. But there's no real impetus to do it, which is where it's the same as growing your own vegetables. When you're at war, you need to grow vegetables because you need to eat. When you're not at war, do I want to grow my own tomatoes when they're £2 at Tesco? I'll go down the path of least resistance and just buy my tomatoes.
And just to be clear, because I know we talk about heat pumps a lot on this show, we're not advocating. You've got to think of people living in, terraced houses and in flats and in apartments where they're not going to have the ability to go and grow their own vegetables, and equally they may not have the opportunity to fit a heat pump. But we're talking about electrified systems in general. You can get infrared heaters now as for heating your homes. You can get highly efficient storage style heaters for apartments. You can get thermal batteries for storing hot water, for hot water usage. You can get batteries in an apartment to store off-peak electricity. You don't have to have solar to have a battery. So this is a solution that is available, but there is still one big barrier in the way, which is the cost of having all these things done.
Yeah. But I think you mentioned it before we came on air, before you even get to a household level, it's about being self-sufficient as a country. And to be self-sufficient as a country, we in effect need to cut all the gas supplies and oil supplies that are coming in and replace them with electricity cables. So the only thing running around the UK would be electricity cables. And then you go a level down and go, right, the only thing you've got access to as a home is electricity because we've cut everything else. So everything in the home needs to be electrically powered. That's your heating, your hot water, everything. And then you look at, right, what are the solutions for different properties? And as much as we go on about heat pumps and we like them, as much as you can like a heat pump, they're not a solution that's perfect for everybody because there can be better solutions for different applications like apartments. But the key is making sure the nation electrifies and then every property electrifies, and then we are self-sufficient, and then we're in control of our own destiny.
And going back to your point, James, around the kind of fact that it is sunnier in New Zealand, so solar does make logical sense. With us being an island, wind makes a huge amount of sense.
And tidal,
yeah.
That's the one thing we have a lot of tidal. It's just coming back to what you're saying, it's expensive.
Yeah, but that's the investment, isn't it? Rather than supplementing people's energy bills, it should be, what can we do today, considering what's going on across the world? What can we do today? And I think this is the call to kind of Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. It's like, let's stop trying to put grants behind the technology, and let's shift some of that money onto the pence per kilowatt hour of electric. Let's subsidize that, because if you make electricity cheap, knowing what's coming down the line, which now we're starting to see it. You don't have, it's on the news that what's coming down the line, and this has been predicted for quite some time. So if you incentivize the cost of electricity, make that really, really cost effective and a no-brainer decision, and then look at ways in which you can do, like the guys at SunSave, where you can have solar and battery fitted at no upfront cost. You can have it taken over a kind of subscription style agreement, again, which is more common in New Zealand. I know people now that have never looked at solar and battery heat pumps. It's never been a concern for them. And because they're worried about what's going to happen in the coming months and what's going to happen next winter, they're now looking at ways in which they can. ways in which they can get solar and battery. But the first thing they say is, I'm going to have to get some kind of interest-free loan or 0% loan to be able to afford to actually buy the system to a sufficient enough size that it actually has a meaningful impact on their energy bills.
But one way you could drive that, and it's not just home energy as well, it's cars on the road. If you didn't just discount electricity, but incentivize electrical use, if you disincentivize fossil fuel use, so you take a home's energy use, if you said, right, we want to knock a penny off the cost of electricity, you could add a penny to the cost of gas. And what you do then is you get a swing of going, right, I'm now disincentivized to use gas. I've got a real reason to use less gas because it's more expensive. And I've got a reason to use more electricity because it's cheaper. So what you want is more people swinging from gas to electricity. But same with oil.
That only works if you solve the problem of the cost of the equipment. Otherwise, everybody who's sat there on gas that is currently struggling to heat their homes, just makes that problem worse if they haven't given them an out.
But if you go down the whole route of, let's say you did that, so you make gas, you make petrol, you make diesel all arbitrarily more expensive, and you incentivize the use of electricity, so electric cars, electric in the home, you've then got the demand will go through the roof, literally, because everyone's there saying, right, I want to use electric cars, I want electric heating, I want heat pumps, I want solar, I want battery. Suddenly you will get Panasonic, Sony, Samsung, all of them going, we need to go to the UK because that's where the demand is. Ramp up production, bring the cost of equipment down. You get all the banks going, everybody's after green tech, but no one can afford it. Interest-free loans, green mortgages. Whereas at the moment, we have this demand that sort of peters each year. There's a little bit of a government announcement, it goes up a bit, then it comes down. If there's that revolution that says every time a boiler breaks, the first thing a consumer says is, I don't want a boiler, I want a heat pump because I need to get off gas because I'm using too much. I need a ceramic hob, I don't want a gas hob because it's using too much. As soon as demand starts outpacing supply, then suddenly all these suppliers should start jumping in, and the finance providers. Where at the moment,
as long as you do it right, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
you can. You could put a lot of people into fuel poverty, and make people who are already in fuel poverty their situation a lot worse if you do those two things at the same time. I think you can,
with no protection. Absolutely,
and no solution. It'd be interesting to know, like, when they started making those changes in New Zealand, and you started to introduce the solar rental schemes. Did that just become kind of commonplace over there? Was there a kind of 50-50 split of people taking the kind of free solar or subscription-based solar, over the paid version?
Yeah, I think from memory, when I left at least, I think 60 to 65% of solar on rooftops was from an energy as a service model. So somebody would have the solar panels and the battery installed for no upfront cost. And instead of paying, 80% of their power costs to an energy retailer, they'd be paying it to the business, but at a fixed monthly cost. Mm-hmm. So I think it became very attractive very fast. But New Zealand probably maybe only 20 or 30 years ago started to wake up to the idea of being able to go solar. But then it was just like that, and it started to take off quite rapidly.
And that's the definition in my mind of energy security. If you went and put solar and a battery on your home as a first step, under a subscription service like that, then at least the electrical aspect of your energy bill is safeguarded. Because yes, you will still have to buy some electricity, and that will still be subject to fluctuations in the energy markets. But the vast proportion of your electricity is coming from self-generated or even charging during off-peak periods. You've taken an element of control back. And I think that's something that should and does resonate with people in the UK. Maybe climate change doesn't hit the button for everybody. Maybe even the technology doesn't. But actually, just taking control of your own energy usage and saying, right, okay, I'm sick of all this noise that goes on. I'm sick of all the changes in energy prices. It's all massively complicated. If you put solar and a battery on your home under a subscription, you know there's a decent chunk of your electricity is going to be safeguarded away from that. And if that is a 5 or 10 year deal, you know you're secure for the next 5 or 10 years, beyond which you can either renew that subscription and get a new system installed, or if you don't think it's right for you, you have it taken off and it's taken away.
So back home in New Zealand, I think initially started off for 20 years, but obviously with the guarantees on the panels, you could actually extend that contract to 25 years.
Even better.
Which was even better. And I think because of the nature of how it was structured, it might be a bit different now, but because you were earning a set amount each and every month, or the business was, you could actually use a proportion of that cost that you were earning and actually subsidize the electricity that was being consumed back into the property.
Well, let's take two of those then. So we've got, there's two I know of in the UK. Maybe you guys know more. Home Tree, who are backed, I believe, by Barclays.
Yep.
So there's Home Tree, who do a solar subscription model, and SunSave, who are probably a bit more well known, maybe, as the two outfits that do it. So, who's best talking about this? From us, what is that model?
I mean, well, I did speak to them. It was a very similar model, except you didn't have. I believe they just set you up with an energy retailer. Maybe they have a relationship with Octopus. I can't remember specifically, but they install the kit. You actually own the kit legally. But you're paying them a monthly amount. I believe it's fixed over the course of 20 years. So it is an agreement with them that they will maintain and upkeep the system. At the end of the lifespan, you will then take ownership of the system. And I believe when you sell, you also take ownership of the system, but you have to pay the remaining amount off. Is that from your understanding?
Yeah, so the difference between the two is Home Tree is more of closer to a traditional finance provider where you can use your own installer. They just provide the finance to pay for the equipment. As long as it's equipment that they approve, so it's on their list, then an installer can go in and fit it. As long as you go through the different hoops along the way, it's like using third-party finance. But again, it's a subscription model. It's based over the length of the agreement, which goes from like 10 years to 25 years. And it's solar, battery, and you can also have an EV charger. If it's SunSave, that is them fitting it. So you go to SunSave and get it all direct. So a consumer can go to them direct. And it's more of a subscription model. So you buy more of a service as opposed to the other one, which is more like finance.
And this is if you own the technology, then I guess as things start to kind of migrate to energy flexibility services where you can kind of say, well, I've got a battery, I'll offer it up to the grid. I've got excess solar, I'll offer it up to the grid. You can benefit from the ability to sell electricity back to the grid during times when the grid needs it and kind of top up your income when those markets start to come online. But this is in both of those cases, both with SunSave and with Home Tree, am I right in saying this is essentially 0% upfront? There's no deposit, or if the deposit is there, it's minimal?
Yeah, kind of. I think the way you can work it is there's little to nothing upfront. Yeah. Whether it's your first payment or whatever. But yeah, essentially you're removing all the capital cost barrier.
But that's, I mean, as a first step to take, there's going to be still plenty of people out there. And to be honest, I get sick of talking to those ones that just sit there and say, nah, I'm gas, I'm oil for life, I'm not switching. Fine, go. Good luck when that comes your way. So just talking to the people that are sat there saying, I'd love to do this, but I can't afford it. So you're paying your energy bill anyway. You go with SunSave and then you pay them a monthly fee, and all you're doing is paying them a proportion of your energy rather than paying it to the energy retailer. I'm not saying it's as black and white as that, but it's...
Yeah, so roughly if you're going to save £10, you're going to pay £8 of it to them. You save a little bit, but you're not saving as much as you would have done if you'd have paid for it all yourself or, put it on a credit card or whatever it might be. The only bit that people sometimes struggle to get their head around, particularly when it comes to a solar product, is what you forecast is based on something that is slightly unpredictable, which is the sun. And you could have next year could be really sunny, or it might not be as sunny. So you've got to bear in mind that you should be better off. And the chances are, if you were gambling, you will be better off. But you also can't predict the fact it might be cloudier than it was last year.
Yeah, it's the variable, I guess.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I really enjoyed when I spoke to people back home in New Zealand was at least opening up the conversation that you've got a lifetime contract with the electricity industry, with the market. You're always going to have to pay your power bill, especially in New Zealand, because electricity is pretty much all that you're getting. So having that autonomy to make the decision that as a consumer, I'm going to buy this solar system. It's going to produce 80% of my energy, give or take, and I'm going to be buying it at this cost. Then you can actually calculate what you're paying on average per unit. And that's a very rewarding kind of experience to go, okay, once I break even, I'm actually going to be in a position where I'm generating energy for free, and I have control over my electricity now. Which seems, I don't know if it's the same here in the UK. In New Zealand, everyone wants to, this is my house, I own this house, I own this car. But here in the UK, maybe they're a bit more fluid about opportunities with subscription models and being open
newer
to
generations maybe more open to it, but then that does get exposed to the fact that maybe newer generations aren't buying their forever home, and therefore we need to be in a position where mortgage lenders are behind this and they're saying, I've got no issue if you buying a house with a solar subscription attached to it becomes the norm. That's got to change fast, and that just takes the big banks to wake up and start saying what you're doing with kind of 5-year switching is not helping anybody. Actually start doing long-term fixed rates, or recognizing that we need to do there needs to be these kind of subscription models attached to a home and they transfer. I think they are starting to wake up to that, but they've been slow.
But hopefully that'll come out of the Warm Homes Plan, because there's obviously a big focus in there around low-cost finance and 0% finance, because I think for whatever reason they've finally recognised that finance is one of the biggest barriers. So in the Warm Homes Plan, it specifically mentions 0% and subscription models, energy as a service, heat as a service, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's what it needs, because it also needs to be open to everybody. I mean, one of the good things about the way these kind of solar subscription lease deals are structured is that you're already paying your energy bill. So it's a big part of your household expenditure anyway. So that you're not looking at going and taking on an additional loan on top that you maybe can't afford. This is something you already pay for. You're just diverting some of the money that goes out of your bank account now to somebody who's going to give you energy security over an energy retailer who unfortunately can't give you that security because the energy is directly linked to the markets. So making that simple decision, or even going onto the Home Tree or the SunSafe websites and putting in your postcode and getting an indicative cost and quote, should be a step that everybody watching this can go and do if they haven't got it already. And then on top of that, you've got, when you start making that switch, me personally, I'd be saying the most important part of that system, you're going to be restricted of how many panels you can put on your roof by the size of your roof and the orientation of your house. If you've got more space, put bigger batteries in, because the more energy that you can take when electricity is cheaper, the better. Because if you're going on this journey of electrifying your home, the next logical step will be whether it's putting a heat pump in. I say a heat pump because you're getting £7,500 off the government to go and fit one.
And it's the most efficient. At the moment, that is the most efficient electric heating solution.
And with organizations that are bringing these kind of zero disrupt or, low impact installations where the mindset is changing away from going, right, let's rip all your radiators out, let's make everything super efficient. They're saying, let's put a heat pump in. Let's upgrade the minimum number of radiators that are needed. Let's keep your upfront investment down to a bare minimum. And then over time, if you start going, I could tell you what, that room might struggle a little bit to get up to temperature, it takes a bit longer, then upgrade that one radiator at a cost of a few £100. Yeah.
But it's trying to get heat pumps onto a pedestal with the alternatives, the traditional alternatives, because what we've been very good at over the last 20 years is saying, right, we want to try and get people to move towards a low carbon solution, i.e. a heat pump. But at the same time, why don't we get them to do 10 other things as well? Why don't we get them to insulate the house, loft, cavity wall, do double glazing? Let's get them to do a new EPC. Let's also get them to swap all their radiators and all their pipe work. All these things, which are all brilliant, but create huge barriers to people taking a heat pump. Because the person who's taking the heat pump is going, I need to swap my boiler. It's either broken or it's about to. And you're now telling me to do all these other 20 things, which sound great, but have just made it really impractical or horrible or invasive to get a heat pump. And now we're having to reverse out of all that. So that's why you're getting zero disrupt from likes of EDF and HeatGeek and people like that, because they're all saying, right, let's now talk to consumers about going, let's do the bare minimum, put it on a pedestal with the alternative, which is a boiler, and go, you're going to get a boiler. How about a heat pump? Let's not touch anything else or the bare minimum, and then worry about that other stuff later, because it's best practice, which is the same with the boiler. And what they should do is say, right, if you want a boiler or a heat pump, either you have to do all these things that are best practice, or you don't have to do them and you can do them later, which is why all these are popping up.
Do you think with those zero disrupt installs, it's hard for heat pump installers to actually move away from doing something completely bespoke? Because from my experience from speaking to people or heat pump installers, they really enjoy doing their best work and doing a bespoke job and changing all the radiators out and making the flow temp perfect and just having the perfect installation.
I think it's the installers you've got at the moment. Mm-hmm. So the installers that are typically fitting heat pumps are the ones who've been very forward thinking and have got into the industry at what is still quite an early stage. So they're installers who are doing the perfect job. They're looking at everything in their house. They're swapping all the radiators and they're making it a very efficient home, not just fitting a heat pump, which means that the person coming out the other side should be happy because their energy bills are at the lowest they could be. They're running in the best way that they could be. Where this new model is going is trying to bring in the installers that aren't currently fitting heat pumps, the ones that are putting in 2-3 boilers every day, trying to get them to fit a heat pump. It needs to be as easy or as close to as possible, which is you were fitting 2 boilers a day, you can now fit a heat pump a day. If you start throwing in the whole bespoke home, that's what all the existing heat pump stores are doing. This is for the heating engineer that is currently just fitting boilers every day.
Well, there's going to be a massive switch up when air to air starts coming in, because certainly I've started seeing more and following more kind of HVAC and aircon installers on Instagram and TikTok, and these guys make it look simple. You know, they're in and out in a couple of days, and you see these systems and the people that are experiencing these systems, they're getting all the heating and cooling in the winter months. In the summer months, but they've never had access to the grant. So when the grant comes in to support this in the next few months, I think,
back end of this year. But the key thing, and whoever cottons onto it first, and you heard it first here, is whoever starts selling aircon, which is what it is, air-to-air heat pumps, on the cooling being the lead, will clean up. Because what is the reason that people got electric cars initially? Because it was exciting and it was interesting. No, most people didn't get an electric car because they were desperate to save on their fuel costs. They got one because they were like, Teslas are awesome and it's cheaper to run. Nobody's fitting heat pumps because they're exciting. Whereas if you start selling air-to-air heat pumps on the basis of, it's really hot in the summer and everyone goes out and buys loads of fans from Argos and they all get in short supply, you could have aircon in your bedroom, which no one else has got, which is really nice. It's really, executive, it's VIP, you've got aircon in your house and it's cheaper to run your heating system and you get a grant. If you lead with the cooling, that's the excitement because that makes it interesting. But the rest of it isn't that interesting.
You bring that package together then you've got a kind of subscription-based solar model. You bang a big battery in and then you charge that battery overnight. You sell any excess electricity back to the grid under the smart export guarantee. So you're getting paid for that. Anything you're generating during the times when you need it, you're consuming. Therefore, it's at no cost in terms of electricity purchase from the grid. You then put an air-to-air system in, and you've got your heating and cooling needs, and you can be powering that from the battery, if spec'd right. And that's important when you're speaking to the likes of SunSave or Home Tree or anybody doing these subscriptions, is making sure that you're telling them, I'm electrifying my home, so I want an inverter that's big enough, that's capable enough for supporting the heating system in the future as well. And you then start making a big switch, and actually your upfront cost is minimized, and it could be minimized. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say this. It could be minimized to the same cost of replacing a boiler. If you get that package right, with SunSave, with the £7,500 grant off the government or whatever it ends up being for air-to-air systems. But there's still one part, which is this hot water system side. So currently you have to have a hot water storage system installed or one there already in order to make the most of this. And that's another barrier where people go, well, I haven't got hot water storage, space for hot water storage. And we've talked a couple of times on this show about SunAmp. Mm-hmm. It's a small thermal battery. It's a lot more. It fits into kind of the size of a dishwasher, washing machine style space. But one of the big benefits of that is it means you're accessible for the grant. It does have it's not as efficient in terms of heating hot water from a heat pump. It's not as efficient as if you put in a big hot water tank with huge cold capacity. But you can also heat it direct from the electric. So again, you could be charging that up during the off-peak electricity hours. You still benefit from the £7,500 grant, but you may never run the heat pump on that SunAmp. You might connect it up, but there's nothing to say that you then have to heat that from the heat
Which
pump.
is the same as a cylinder. You could run your cylinder on your immersion all day long if you wanted to. Yeah. And that's where sun amps sort of come into their own is if you have an application where there is no space and you're at risk of that person not decarbonising and going back to a fossil fuel, then fit a sun amp. It's definitely far more efficient than you would have been on fossil fuels. And if you then start using any excess solar or cheap electricity overnight for the sun amp, then you definitely quit them.
Well, I seen it on, so with the home energy model that we've built, when you run these simulations through it for a household, say, right, what does this look like if they go ahead and have this installed? And currently, it makes more sense to be selling electricity back to the grid because you're getting the solar export, smart export guarantee. So in those off-peak periods where you're getting cheap electricity overnight, charge your battery up full capacity, charge your hot water storage or your sun amp up full capacity, and then as soon as the sun starts generating, start selling it all back. And then, yeah, if you turn anything on in your home, you're not going to be buying electricity at that rate from the grid. But as long as during that period, if it's more beneficial to be selling back to the grid and you earning for the solar you've got on your roof. And we spoke to Ian Dixon yesterday. He didn't even know this was a thing, that you could sell solar back to the grid and actually get paid for it at the same time. And this is still all available in these subscription models, isn't it? You're still getting paid for electricity that you sell back.
I was just going to say it feels like a bit of a cheat code. Is what I was going to say. If once you kind of
a secret menu.
Once you wrap your head around that, you have access to, you can actually buy energy for a cheaper rate overnight, store it in your battery, and then actually make money off the energy you sell back to the grid. I don't know. It's almost like an energy stock market, I guess, in a way.
One of the questions we do get asked though is, if I'm getting solar and a battery, why don't I just go and get another battery and do that? Just fill it up when it's cheap and sell it back. And I think that's where there isn't a big enough gap to make it profitable. So if you fit a battery and you're charging it up at night on, say, Octopus is 8p, and then you're selling it back in the day at, I think they've dropped to 12 now, but they were at 15p, even though you're getting double your money, it's not enough profit to pay for the battery before the battery needs replacing in 10 years or whatever it might be. So a battery on its own just to earn money isn't big enough and cost effective enough domestically to pay for itself. So as long as you're having a solar system and a battery for your own house, then the icing on the cake is you can sell back, and you should do. So in the summer, you'll be getting paid, and over the course of the year, your energy bills are even lower because you made some money when it was really sunny selling back to the grid. Definitely do that. But there does become a tipping point where once you've got to the maximum batteries that you're going to use in your house, getting the next battery isn't yet worthwhile because the gap between what you get paid for your electricity and what you're selling it what you're paying for the electricity and what you're selling it at isn't big enough.
But that's when you think of the world of kind of energy storage, that trading aspect is just a kind of an added benefit.
Yeah.
But then you've got, if you're storing your hot water using electricity, I know now if I have a power cut, I'll still have hot water. If I was on my gas boiler, I wouldn't be able to have hot water. So I know I can charge. I've got a 210 litre sun amp. It's literally sits about the same height as this sofa, but it stores the equivalent of 210 litres of hot water. I charge that up. Usually it takes about 2 hours to fully charge, so I turn it on at about 1 o'clock, just on a timer. Electric element inside it, heats it up for 2.5 hours, and then I know I've got hot water throughout the day, baths, showers, washing, whatever's needed. So even if we have a power cut, I've still got hot water. If I'm a boiler, that wouldn't be the case. If I was on a gas boiler, if I added the battery into that equation, then installed correctly so that I can still operate in, is it called island mode? When
off grid.
Yeah,
off grid. So again, if I have a power cut, or they tell me I can't consume from the grid for the next few hours because of this thing going on in Ukraine or Iran or whatever. Again, I know I've got energy security in my own home because I can run off the battery for the next few hours. I might limit what I use. You might not go around and be running any high cost electricity items during that time. But even if you were electrified on the heating side, then you go, right, okay, well, if I know that I've got a window of time coming up where I'm not going to be able to turn things on, I'm gonna heat up my house in the hours before it. So you start taking that control, which I think a lot of homes have lost. by just saying, look, I've got no control over the energy markets. I've got no control over what goes on with gas. They take my money. I pay my bills. It is what it is. By making these adjustments, you start taking control, and actually that package solution, you're not breaking the bank to get that. You're essentially, instead of paying the energy retailers, which a lot of people don't want to do anyway, you're paying funding and finance providers. I'm not saying that's a huge amount better in that world, but I
think what they need to realize is that none of this is very interesting to the average person. Like, everything you've just described is interesting to us, but to the average person, and this has been the problem, is people are prepared for energy bills to go up. When they see the energy price count going, oh, it's going to be £300 a year, it's 30 quid a month. For the average people, not people in fuel poverty, but for the average people, who just go, I don't care. I'll just carry on working, and it'll be what it'll be. I've got no control over it, and it's energy. I just have to pay it. So it's not a very interesting space, and people feel quite powerless. Whereas if you focus on the gateways, which are electric cars, and now with air-to-air, probably the cooling, the stuff that is interesting to people because they go, that's going to actually change my comfort or, interest or my day-to-day life. When they get an electric car, whether it's a Tesla or a Jag or whatever, they feel good because they're in a new car, it's exciting, it's faster, whatever. That's your gateway into going, right, now we've got you, let's talk about tariffs, which otherwise is incredibly boring. But then they all start looking at tariffs, and you get people that go, I'm getting an electric car, and then they become uber geeks about energy because the electric car got them onto tariffs, which got them onto batteries, which got them onto solar, which got them onto the heat pump. No one's interested in anything after the electric car, but it gets them in. And